The aftermath of the COVID era has been a difficult adjustment for the beverage alcohol industry, with elevated consumption levels coming back to earth and price inflation putting a strain on consumer budgets. Premium brands, which also got a charge during COVID, have been a little more resilient as consumers who traded up have been reluctant to go back. That's according to Paul Basford, President and Managing Director of William Grant & Sons USA, speaking on this week's edition of The Marketer's Brief, our weekly discussion of marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. William Grant markets a portfolio of premium spirits, including Glenfiddich, Balvenie, Hendrick's Gin, Milagro Tequila, and Tullamore Dew Irish Whiskey. While these brands all accelerated during COVID, innovation, packaging, and marketing are all critical as the industry normalizes, Basford says. We'll also discuss how the rise of non-alcoholic beverages and RTDs are affecting the industry, as well as the marketing strategies for premium brands. I'm John Springer, senior reporter at Ad Age, and this is the Marketer's Brief podcast. Paul Basford, welcome to the Marketer's Brief podcast.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Well, Paul, let's talk a little bit about the spirits. And you're with William Grant & Sons. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your background here with William Grant & Sons. How did you get to this kind of career?
Yeah, I know. Good question. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not from around these parts. So I'm born and raised in the north of England and kind of fell into spirits. I won't say by accident, but just by some chance where I was actually looking for a new job after leaving university. And I happened to we used to look at jobs in newspapers back then in England. And I happened to find a newspaper advertisement for a job at Diageo, who obviously are a big spirits company globally, headquartered in the UK. And I applied, pretty green, no experience, no real knowledge of spirits. And to be honest, didn't have much hope for getting a job, just thought it sounded like a great job. And was fortunate enough that Diageo were actually looking for somebody that was pretty green, pretty untrained, so that they could effectively give the Diageo way to that person. So I joined those at the age of 21, effectively selling their amazing range of spirits up and down the street in my home county. And then after about 10 years at Diageo, I did different jobs, moved through different tiers of the organization, different regions, different customers, and had a real amazing bed of training and development at Diageo. They invest really heavily in people. And that was really the foundation for my career in spirits, albeit after 10 years at Diageo, I wanted to see whether my skills were transferable to other industries. And I moved across to a soft drinks business, a Pepsi business in the UK, which took me into soft drinks and cordials and things. I did 10 great years there, did a lot of international experience in Australia, South Africa, and then more latterly in the US, which brought me to the US and to run their US business and set up their US business, basically franchising a kids product into the US, working with PepsiCo in the US. And then after 5 years there in the US, I moved to Danone Waters, which is, people wouldn't necessarily know the name of the company by that, but Evian Water, Volvic Water, Badwa Water, and leading their North American business. And I think at that time, having been away from spirits for a while, it became pretty clear that I was missing the very unique DNA, the very unique traits and trends that exist in this industry. The people are very different in this industry. And then the more the freedom to invest and the ability to invest behind profitable brands in this industry is very different to water and soft drinks. So I've had a real blessed really to have the career I've had so far. It's by no means finished, but I've worked on some incredible brands, the likes of Smirnoff, the likes of Jack Daniels, Woodford Reserve, Guinness, Baileys, Evian, obviously, and Gatorade and Pepsi. And then more latterly, the William Grant portfolio, which is a fabulous range of brands, Hendrick's, Glenfiddich, Balvenie, Milagro Tequila, Reyka Vodka, Monkey Shoulder, just a whole range of really high-end premium spirits that actually really encapsulates my love of the industry, but also at a premium level. And the brands are a real joy to work with.
Yeah, and you said premium a couple of times describing William Grant. That might be a little bit of an advantage today. There's a lot of talk about how it's sort of dark times for the spirits industry, although the premium is done well. I wonder if you can kind of how you're looking at it today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We are in a good spot in terms of where the market's moving with our premium portfolio. I think certain categories are probably having a dark time, and certainly other alcoholic categories, wine and beer, are having a tough time. I think ourselves, we are continuing to capitalize on the premiumization trend that continues to exist post-COVID. There has been undoubtedly a huge correction in consumption patterns from COVID to where we are now. I mean, you think about what people used to do during COVID and how they used to drink and how much they used to consume, housebound for the most part of it, the consumption levels were really high. So in a real sense, there was never a way that would ever continue across time. I think there's a normalization going on now where people are returning to more normal consumption patterns. And that's why we see the industry stabilizing and kind of resetting itself. But in terms of the premium trend really kicked off during COVID. People bought better because they had more money to spend. People bought certainly higher up in the portfolio and in the age ranges and at the price points in retail. And that's continued. People continue to buy up the ladder. But once you've tried something really great, you never really want to go back to something that's more mainstream. And we're blessed to have that in our armory, really, because we have the brands that fit perfectly with that occasion and that consumer. We have, different expressions of our whiskey at different price points. We have a super premium gin and an ultra premium gin that fit in whatever price points are going on in gin. And I think it's just a good trend for us to continue. And that's why the business continues to do well, despite the consumption pattern slowing down.
Yeah. And any concerns about sort of the economic times with rising prices for groceries and other things that are sort of kind of getting to the consumer? Have you seen any of that play out?
I think, it all plays into the consumption piece. I think, again, it goes back to people having a lot of money during COVID and now having to tighten their belts with the cost of goods on everything going up. I think that's a real concern, albeit, as I say, people might not be drinking as much, but they continue to drink better. So we do continue to command quite a good share of that disposable income from consumers.
Has it been worth it for them to sort of trade up the way they have?
I think it's almost like, how do they go back to where they were before? I think the quality of liquid, the way that the brands are created, the history, and they're buying into something very special when they're buying into William Grant's products. It's a family business. It's something that's been consistent since 1887 when the business first established itself. And I think people will pay more for something that they know is consistent and they know is high quality. And liquid quality, particularly coupled with innovation and coupled with great packaging, are really the hallmark of William Grant. So we're able to command and assume that consumers will pay more for our brands because we give them reasons to.
Yeah. And another trend in alcohol is canned cocktails. I know that's sort of the other end of the spectrum from you, but I wonder how you're kind of looking at it from your seat.
Yeah, no, there is an undoubted canned cocktail seltzers, however you want to coin them. There's a huge trend, and I think it fits another pattern of consumer behavior that we're seeing now, which is one of convenience. People are wanting convenient formats, and I think a can is a really convenient format for today's on-the-go movement, and people being able to kind of take that into different places and different formats around their lifestyle. That's certainly one. And then I think convenience in terms of the portability, the channel in which it's purchased. People are buying a lot more on the go. So the convenience channel itself is becoming quite a hotspot for liquor and for canned cocktails. I think what we're seeing is it exploded with probably 20 to 30 different brand launches in the space. What we're seeing now is probably it consolidated into 3 or 4 big players as people have really chosen their favorites. And those favorites are pretty clear in the market. If you go into any liquor store, you'll see the space that those guys get. And I think it's something that's probably impacted the mainstream spirit sector more than it has premium, and probably impacted the wine and beer industry more than it has probably premium spirits, just because that's the occasion from which canned cocktails really steal.
Yeah, I mean, all that said, would William Grant consider getting into that business at all?
We've looked at the space at the moment. We think it's not necessarily in our capability at the moment. We're all about building the spirit brands we have. We have a lot of opportunity in our core portfolio. It's not something that we're looking at entering right now. And I think we'll see over time whether it continues or whether in the next couple of years it dissipates. But for now, we're just focused on the building of our existing brands in which there is much opportunity.
Okay, a couple other trends we see in the industry. Tequila, it's been hot, remains hot, right? Is it still hot?
It's still hot, yeah. It's coming down in price point. So we had this, I would say, tequila boom, this tequila phenomenon that was literally part of COVID and part of purchasing habits during COVID. And there was quite a unique, I guess, sequence of events that happened. One is celebrities started to get involved in the tequila world. Secondly, the consumers started to change the pattern and taste for brands during COVID. They became almost bored with some of the existing and regular drinks and wanted to try categories that were different. Tequila offers a different taste. Tequila is incredibly mixable, and it fit really well with the trend of mixology and the way that people were home mixing and almost home bartending at the time. Tequila played really well into that. And I think the badge of having a tequila brand, the celebrity endorsement and the different taste became a very unique opportunity for many brands, one of which we have ourselves, which is Milagro tequila, that has grown to almost 1 million cases from nowhere in kind of 5-6 years. And it continues. And I think the beauty of tequila, it's almost changed its positioning from a brand or a category that is about shots and about quick drinks into more mixability and into a margarita, a paloma. Those sort of beverages now are on every single menu across almost every single bar in the country. And I think that's what the category's done really well, is reposition itself. And, obviously the taste on top of that, and effectively people trading up in tequila through different price points into ultra premium and super premium, and then different variants. I think people always thought that tequila was one dimensional. There's a reposado that sits above the silver. There's an añejo that sits above the reposado. And then there's a cristalino that's starting to evolve now, which is probably the latest category. And certainly one of our latest launches into market is a Milagro cristalino, which is effectively a filtered añejo. Is becoming a trend, and people are wanting to experiment across tequila, and I think at the expense of traditional categories like vodka and some of the more mainstream categories in that sense. I think that, and certainly cognac. Cognac suffered on the back of the tequila explosion as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how about gin? I think there's an argument that gin is maybe bubbling up a little bit.
Yeah, I think certain categories of gin. I think mainstream gin is pretty flat to declining. In fact, it is declining by about 6-7% on a market level. The ultra premium category has grown 87% since 2019. So that kind of tells you the size of the explosion there. We recently acquired a brand called Silent Pool, which effectively sits in that ultra premium gin space because we think that trend is going to continue. It's more the $60 plus price point on gin, which we've not historically seen a lot of. And then we have Hendrick's in super premium, which is our real Powerball as a business that is, unabated and continues to grow 5-6% year over year. Hendrick's is a fabulous brand. It's a brand that has brand call. Instead of gin and tonic, people call Hendrick's and tonic. It's a very heavily featured cocktail brand, and we innovate around that to keep consumers excited, interested with our annual Cabinet of Curiosity range, which is a different iteration of base Hendrick's with herbs, botanicals, fruit. And we bring that out in February, March every year. And that's an important way of making a brand that's been around since 1999 relevant today. You have to keep innovating against a core brand that's remained consistent, against a packaging that is quite unique and iconic, and against a liquid that is very accessible for gin. It's not overly full of juniper. It's just a really accessible so that white spirit drinkers can become aficionados of the brand as well.
Yeah, and they're one of the most interesting brands in terms of their marketing. I wonder if you can kind of talk about how you approach marketing for that brand and William Grant brands in general.
No, absolutely. I think the point on our brands is to be very consumer-centric. We've really pushed our model to be consumer-centric versus trade-centric across history. I think that the importance of the consumer is a real heavy point of our strategy now. The consumer is our real only boss, as we say internally, and it's a real motivating cry for a lot of our brand and our brand work. I think what consumers really want to see is something different. And in Hendrick's, it's a very, very different proposition. It's very curious. It's very Victoriana. It's very English. It's basically based on its roots and its heritage. And when our former owner, Charles Gordon, decided he wanted to innovate into this space, he wanted it to be very different. The name is different. In fact, the name plays back to the person that used to garden the roses at the family home. Hendrick's was his name. The bottle is very curious. It's almost like a former apothecary bottle. It looks like an old poison bottle, so adds some curious nature to the whole what's in the bottle. And then I think the blend and the brand is very distinctive. As I say, it's very accessible in liquid. It's not heavy. It's very mixable. And I think it keeps people intrigued. And then, as I say, we innovate around it, makes it really exciting. And that's why the brand has just gone from strength to strength and is leading super premium gin in the US. And we will continue to be curious. Infusing cucumber as the serve of choice when Hendrick's was launched and continues to be the serve of choice is quite a strange idea for some people, but it's quite an eye-catching and an iconic idea in other senses, and that picks up the rose and the cucumber in the base blend. So it's a brand that we're proud to have in the portfolio and continues to grow unabated.
Yeah. So there's a couple of other brands we'd love to talk about here. Balvenie with Questlove.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about sort of why that makes sense for you. Maybe describe a little bit of what you're doing there.
Yeah, sure. No. So we partner with Questlove on a program called Quest for Craft, which is effectively working with people who are real champions of their craft and their industry and who are the best at what they do. And that's because Balvenie is a very crafted single malt Scotch. It's a very old school recipe. It's a very, the way it's been distilled and manufactured since 1892 has remained strong and the same. And I think it's about making sure that people are aware that it really is a craft quality product. Quest for Craft and Questlove fit really well with that. And he interviews part of the program, and we're now in the fourth series. He interviews a range of people across different sectors that are effectively the champions of craft in their own right. People like Mark Ronson, Anderson Paak, Patti Smith. We have really high-end people talking about how and why they're the best at what they do. And obviously, Questlove himself is a winning filmmaker, producer, DJ, director, who is very, very good at what he does. So the two things come together really well, and it brings us into different audiences and different demographics as a brand. Debunking the myth that single malt, and particularly Balvenie, is something for older people. The thing that we're looking at is how do we make it more relevant to younger people? Because actually it is a very young, stylish drink around the world, and in the US it's starting to move that way. So I think it just gives us the opportunity to bring that audience into the brand, and it just fits creatively with the craft message that we want to push across.
Yeah, and is it moving single malt?
It is. The category is struggling. I will be honest with you. I think the category is one of the categories that has been struggling post-COVID. It's one that people bought a lot of during COVID. Glenfiddich, which is our main single malt whiskey, and Balvenie are outperforming the category and growing. And I think that's just a testimony to the care, attention, quality of those brands, but also the work that our distributors put in to continuing the legacy of the family. And I think the unique nature of William Grant is, we have family members now, sixth generation in the business, that are looking after the brands in the same way that William Grant did in 1887. And I think it's a really unique proposition. And I think people buy into that family history, and they buy into the fact that we're only about creating the right liquid consistently versus just trying to profit from something in a short-term basis.
Yeah. So, Monkey Shoulder whiskey, you're doing something a little bit similar. Maybe it's even more younger focused.
Yeah, even younger. I think Monkey Shoulder itself is a great innovation. It's a blend of malt, and we've been partnering. Again, it's about mixability. We have lots of assets that enforce the mixability message. It's the bartender choice for mixing, and mixed Scotch whiskey drinks have become quite a trend. We've been working with Worldwide FM star and DJ Giles Peterson in working through some supporting mixed music around the country elements, and we put some funding. $60,000 has gone into a fund into music cities to help local projects. And again, mixing music, mixing Scotch, the kind of similarity is there to be seen, and actually it does bring in a younger audience. And I think we've done some really good stuff in Miami, and some good things happening in Miami with the Miami Collective. We invested heavily against that, and I think it fits the brand really well, and the personality of brand, which is lively, which is vibrant, which is mixable, and it's very orange. Monkey Shoulder is a very, very orange brand, and the colours are very vibrant to fit the high energy scene.
So kind of on the digital side, how are you leveraging social media to build your brands, and how important are influencers to William Grant?
Yeah, I mean, social media is a super important channel for us for broad scale reach, but also for awareness. And it gives us an ability to connect one-to-one with our consumers, which is quite unique. We've seen some incredible results on Pinterest more recently, specifically targeting brand lift and partnering with Pinterest on a case study for Glenfiddich, which will be published very soon. So Pinterest has become a channel that we've evolved against. And I think we're able to have a range of brands that fit the consumer need of shifting to video on, sound on kind of dynamics. Our brands play well here, particularly on Instagram. We're very visual. We have the right creative messages, and it's immersive content. So I think we have that really playing in our favor. And then in terms of influencers, we've been growing the role of influencers in our strategy. We're very, I would say, specific and data-led in who we choose. It has to fit the purpose of the brand. It has to fit a region in which we're looking to target. It has to be the right person that fits the authenticity of the messaging on the brand. But we have been using influencers quite heavily, particularly in the more recent Silent Pool launch. Having the right influencers that get to the right consumers with the right premium message has been key, particularly around food and some of the messaging there. So influencers and social have obviously become a way bigger part of our marketing mix than they probably were 5-10 years ago. So it's a journey we will continue to push against.
Okay, speaking of a journey, we're looking now 5 or 10 years ahead. Just big picture, what do you see in front of us for the spirits industry?
I wish I had that crystal ball, really, but I'll give you some of Paul Basford's view. I think first of all, we're going to see a lot of artificial intelligence coming in and generative artificial intelligence. I think that's going to have a huge impact how we target, how we create, how we price, and how we package our brands. AI is undoubtedly going to play a big part there, and I think we're wrapping our arms around what that looks like, as everybody else is. I think the second trend we'll see is probably the quality over quantity trend will continue. Consumption, people have obviously been very responsible in consumption. Gen Z obviously not consuming as much as previous generations have, but we will continue to make sure that when they do, that they're buying better and they're buying into our portfolio. That's an interesting trend that I think we'll see continue. And then I honestly think we will see more non-alc, more low-alc products coming into market. That's undoubtedly going to be something that as people consume less, they still want to perceive that they're having some sociability and a mixed drink. I don't think anybody has cracked the code yet on a really good non-alc spirit, like they have done in beer. There's some fabulous non-alc beers. I don't think anybody has cracked the code on why should a consumer drink a non-alcoholic spirit. I would like to think that William Grant will be the first to do that, given our pioneering nature over time.
Are you at work on it now?
We may well be working on something now, but I don't think there's anything imminent, because I think we, as a family company, it's something that we will take our time on. It will have to be the best of the best before we launch it. So I think we're quite a way away from that, but it will be quite step change when we do it.
Okay, great. Well, last question here. I'd love to ask our guests, any campaigns or brands out there, not your own, that you admire or learn from?
I've always loved, I guess I'm a Guinness guy initially. I've always loved some of the Guinness campaigns and how they relate to consumer, how they relate to trade, and how they bring everything in together. I think some of the tequila campaigns out there, particularly the ones around purity and additive free, and the way that links into packaging and clean packaging. Lalo is an example of a brand that does a really nice job of clean packaging, clear liquid, messaging and additive free, is a very kind of symbiotic marketing strategy. And, again, part of my previous portfolio, Johnnie Walker continued to reinvent themselves as a brand over time, all the way through their portfolio, even bringing in Johnnie Walker Blue. So we look at all these campaigns and we learn from what we can, and we then generally we create ourselves what is the best campaign for us. But there's a lot of celebrity endorsements that frankly is not really in William Grant's stable. Being a family organization, we want to let the brands speak for themselves given the quality, but there's some really good campaigns out there right now as well.
Okay, great. Paul Basford, it's really been a pleasure having you on the Marketer's Brief.
John, thank you ever so much. It's been a real pleasure.
That was Paul Basford, President and Managing Director of William Grant & Sons USA, and I'm John Springer, Senior Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Ciardio, and remind you that you can subscribe to the Marketer's Brief wherever you get podcasts. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.